Everywhere was so strange to me and it was scary. Being in a new place did something to me, and I was so cautious about my surroundings. My aunt had been so nice and sweet when I arrived, but her loving qualities could not compensate for the strangeness of the city. "Are you okay?" she asked, and it instantly made me jerk up. I was so tense. "Yes, I am," I replied shakingly, and she looked at me with eyes of concern. "I know this is a whole new experience for you, but don't worry, you will soon get used to it," she said and smiled reassuringly. I smiled back as a form of courtesy, but I did not feel assured. I looked down at my feet, and when I looked back at my aunt, I couldn't believe my eyes. There she was, my mother, reduced to a grotesque caricature of herself. Her skin, a sickly yellow, clung to her bones, and a chilling skeletal grin was frozen on her face. I quickly gasped and looked away. When I summoned the courage to look back, she was nowhere to be found. Suddenly a loud voice sounded beside me and I screamed. "Wake up! You are already late for school," my aunt said as she shook me awake while screaming in my ear. "What?" I said grumpily as I realized that I was indeed late. I suddenly got my senses and moved as a whirlwind around the house whilst completing various tasks like eating and showering. Within a few moments, I was ready for school. "Okay, like I told you yesterday, I won't be able to drop you off at school. I'm so sorry, but you'll have to find the place by yourself due to my schedule," she said pleadingly. "Is that fine by you?" she continued. I nodded my head, even though I was anxious and scared. Even though this was a less inhabited city in England, it still felt weird to me. The events of my mum's passing and the dream I had last night still left me traumatized. However, I knew I had to push through. "I have to be strong," said the inner voice in my head. The school bus had already passed because I slept in late. Due to that, the only other option available was taxis. I quickly flagged one down, and it was at that moment I realized I messed up. I had forgotten the name of the school. Instantly, I remembered my aunt telling me that there was only one school for kids around, so I just told the cab driver to take me there. He told me to hop in and gave me a wide-toothed smile, only that he only had 3 teeth, 2 up and 1 down. That gave me the shivers. Within moments, he dropped me off at the school, but something was not right. The entire school looked deserted. I had already come down and paid him, so when I turned around to confirm if this was the school, he had driven off, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. It was as if he was very eager to leave the school. The dust made me cough, but it paled in comparison to the mist that surrounded the school. The school looked like a medieval castle. I hadn't watched the movie Harry Potter, which was about a school of wizardry, but I believed it would look like the school before me. Grimstone Manor School. I read aloud from a very worn-out sign in front of the school. The sign had lasted the taste of time and was covered in rust along with something that looked like blood. I muttered in a hushed tone. At that point, every single cell in my body was yelling at me to flee, but for some reason, I didn't. I found myself walking towards the school. It was as if something was calling me inside. The mist was so thick that I could not see 3 feet in front of me, and I could have sworn I heard whispers. "Oh, a visitor. We haven't had one in years." Finally, some excitement. "Who is there?" I screamed in a panicked tone. I wanted to confirm I wasn't crazy. Immediately, I screamed, and all the voices imaginary I hoped ceased. I took in a deep breath and continued walking. Suddenly, I kicked a stone and fell face first to the floor, and felt a sharp pain instantly on my left hand. I quickly examined it and found out that a sharp rock had pierced me. Immediately, a drop of my blood touched the floor. There was an eerie silence and the mist cleared. I could now see the school in detail. I did not think anything of the incident and continued marching forward into the school. Auntie would not be happy if I skipped classes on my first day. I said to myself as I hurried along while sucking my hand to stop the blood from spilling. When I reached the door and was about to knock, it opened by itself and a gust of wind hit me. It had a sweet repulsive smell, smelt like roses and decay. This did not still stop me as I braced myself and entered the school, ready to meet new people and face their judging eyes. If I was extra lucky, I could make new friends too. The most shocking thing happened when I entered, though, and it left me so confused and unnerved. "Where is everyone?" I muttered aloud and discombobulated. After standing in my thoughts in silence for a while, I quickly came up with a theory that they were already in class. Of course. How can I be so stupid? I whispered out of breath as I started running to class. I had come late, so they must have already started classes. As I ran, I observed the architectural design of the place. It was terrible. The school was more frightening on the inside. Dust motes danced around in the rays of sunlight that pierced the grimy windows, which illuminated cobwebs thick enough to catch a fly. Even as I ran, the floorboards groaned underfoot, and each step echoed through the cavernous halls. When I came to the hallway, I shockingly discovered that instead of classrooms, there were long, narrow chambers lined with faded portraits of stern-faced teachers or headmasters. Eerily enough, their eyes seemed to follow me down the hall. In the center of the school, a grand staircase spirals upward, its banister cold and slick to the touch. It seemed to twist and turn endlessly, disappearing into the shadows above. I decided not to climb up again, but to settle for the classrooms. I started opening them one by one, but to my surprise, they were empty and very dusty. As I moved, whispers like the rustling of dry leaves seemed to emanate from the depths of the building, growing louder and more insistent as I searched the classrooms further. The more I moved, the more tired I got. By the time I had gone to the last classroom in the hallway, I felt so sleepy. Luckily enough, it was the only classroom that wasn't covered in dust and cobwebs. I quickly entered inside and sat down at the back on one of the rickety and rusty chairs. Before I knew it, I had fallen asleep. "Present, Ma," a random masculine voice said, and that woke me up. I immediately noticed that the classroom is now full, and the teacher is reading out names to get attendance. Quickly, I brush up my hair and clean my face as I do not want to appear grumpy and ugly to my classmates. First impressions always matter. My mind screams, and I know it's true. However, regrettably, their first impression of me would be a sleepyhead. While the teacher read out their names, I noticed something. Nobody was paying me any attention, and that was weird. They were entirely fixated on the teacher, and it was very strange, especially for students of my age. "Alice Morris," the teacher shouted as she looked at me. Her eyes made me uneasy, but I mustered up the courage to respond. "Here, ma'am," I responded. Suddenly, the uneasy feeling multiplies as everybody eerily turns to look at me simultaneously with a strange grin. It was physically impossible for her lips to stretch across their face, as they did now. My heart started racing, and in an instant, due to the grin, their faces started to rip apart, and I could attest that this symmetry on their faces screams death. I was sick to my stomach watching this play out, and I threw up. When I raised my head again, they were now standing and advancing towards me even as their flesh was rotting away before my eyes. I screamed and started to run away, but they immediately chased me. Luckily, due to their flesh and bones rotting away, they were very slow. There was hope. I could escape this alive. Immediately I got to the hallway, this hope died instantly. The once empty and deserted hallway was now filled up. I smelt them before I saw them as the air grew thick with the stench of decay, and something else, something primal and animalistic. I could hear the rasping of breath, the clicking of teeth, the wet, guttural sounds that seemed to emanate from multiple throats. Suddenly figures emerged and filled up the hallways, their eyes burning with a feverish, unnatural light. "Please no! Stop it! Please!" I screamed with tears in my eyes, but they fell on literal deaf ears. They had finally gotten to me, and we were about to make contact when I closed my eyes and screamed as they grabbed me and prepared to feast on me. Immediately, I woke up and found myself being shaken up by a teacher in a strange school. She told me that I had slept all through the classes and school was now over, so I should go home. This was disconcerting for me as I was sweating like crazy. I quickly apologized, shakingly grabbed my bag and left. However, as I do, I can't see the teacher giving me an eerie smile and her face falling away while rotting. "This is just the beginning," she hissed. "Another flesh in Grimstone."